Greetings. I'm Congressman Allen West. It's a privilege and an honor to represent you, the constituents of Florida District 22. Today is Monday, the 27th of February, and yesterday I received a letter from my dear friend, retired Israeli police officer Marc Kahlberg. And I just thought that I would take time to share with you Marc's letter. Marc's letter is a reflective letter about something that happened 10 years ago in Israel. And I think that as we start to consider where we find the Israeli people today and the fact that they are surrounded by those individuals that would like to see their destruction, their demise, and without a doubt bring about a second Holocaust, we must stand strong with the people of Israel. We must stand strong and let Prime Minister Netanyahu know that he has our absolute support as he contends with the threats from Iran, from southern Lebanon and Hezbollah, from Gaza Strip with Hamas, Al-Aqsa, and Al-Quds Martyrs Brigades, as well as Islamic Jihad. But even more so, we have to be concerned about the direction that we see Egypt going into right now. Marc's letter is called Remembering 10 Years. It is remembering the Park Hotel bombing, Passover, 27 March of 2002. If my story through the eyes of the Israeli people, and especially the first responders, has a real meaning and theme over the last decade, it is surely one of silence, one of heroism, one of patience, one of pain and ongoing suffering, but most of all, one of resilience. Unlike the United States, who hailed the spirit on the 10th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, in a manner that only the United States can do, honoring the fallen and the heroes of that tragic day, etched forever in my memory. No one in Israel officially has revisited the people who were first responders. No one has undertaken to step forward and acknowledge my dedicated fellow professionals and simply thank them for giving up so much. Remembering 10 years of carnage, chaos, and hell while providing my testimony of 131 terror attacks that took place in Israel in one short year. Yes, just 1 year is probably the only way I can ever give something back. Where almost 500 innocent lives were lost, where thousands were injured, never to be able to enjoy some of the simple things in life, where shock and trauma set in and slowly but surely, like a cancer, destroyed so many people, in some cases only to be discovered 10 years later, where the survivors and families of those murdered or injured by ruthless, cowardly killers strapping bombs to themselves with shrapnel that certainly meant suffering with excruciating pain through extended periods of time, where the survivors of these inhumane terrorist attacks that targeted innocent people jump at the sound of a siren or a car backfire, where all I can offer to inspire my fellow first responders is a simple memory and a simple hug of affection. Just like the heroic first responders of Ground Zero define what it means to meet adversity and then overcome it, our first responders here in Israel relentlessly met the same adversity over and over again, and we have to overcome it again and again and again. And I ask, why? My behind the headlines and personal account of a simple Israeli policeman's experiences tackling brutal suicide terrorism, violent crime, and delinquency is one that has not been heard or made public before. A very ordinary human approach permeates my real-life account of extraordinary and highly unsettling events. But hidden deep within, the agony stored inside me like a massive archive of data needs to be released and told. My life is not just one of facts and headlines that were too often taken out of context by an unethical code that some of the world's journalistics choose to abide by. I also quietly want to share for the first time my struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder that I stubbornly refused to accept until recently, and by a silent battle I have with myself and, to an extent, my family, both immediate and extended, to ultimately rid myself of this now obvious life-changing condition. I want to allow people everywhere to understand the daily struggles and dilemmas I faced while serving as a first responder, to learn of the solutions I helped formulate to these issues, and to gain a personal perspective on events that are often simplified, to say the least, in international news reports. As an intelligence detective and then commander of the tourist police unit in Netanya during the height of the wave of suicide bomb attacks on a city that is on par to any major tourist vacation in the world, I have no doubt served on the front lines against carnage and terrorism for many years. Ironically, before that, I worked amongst and got to know the psyche of the Palestinian inmates convicted of terrorism charges while serving at a maximum security military facility during my compulsory military service and most of my reserve duty. My life story should have a broad universal appeal to all who are curious to catch a glimpse through the eyes of one Israeli policeman's personal perspective while serving in one of the more volatile regions in the world, where the media and press are ever present, mostly for all of the wrong reasons. Where a cop is bound by a code of silence and the typical Israeli macho stigma places a massive role in the respecting of this unwritten code which forbids even a hint of self-expression. As a person, I certainly must be a universal theme of resilience, trauma, recovery, history, and hope. I start and finish my day by scanning the global news to see where there has been another deadly terror attack. I deplore hearing when these events occur, no matter where they may be. But I still seek the news, just like I spent in the year 2002 with the police radio so close to my ear, not wanting to miss the suspect or the suspicious object, trying to thwart the next blast, the next attack, and more terror, more blood. I somehow find myself in the epicenter of terrorist attacks, and even though I retired close to 6 years ago, last Monday put me back on the job while hosting law enforcement officials and a film crew from the United States. Again, I witnessed yet another terror attack, not in the form of a homicide bombing, but this time in the form of an attempted lynching of two elderly Jewish men in a very hostile area close to the old city of Jerusalem. The vehicle they were traveling in was bombarded with rocks and bricks, and by a miracle only, their lives were spared. Again, the blood-stained clothes and fear in these innocent faces looked at me in the eye, but I refused to give in or give up. I spent almost 7 years in the front line of a war of terror. I witnessed Palestinian suicide bombers launch one bloody bombing after another. Witnessing the horrors of these cowardly attacks over and over again certainly takes its toll, and after either being present at or responding to 16 of these attacks, I relentlessly searched for anyone who was even remotely part of this terror campaign as a priority of my policing duties. I made hundreds of arrests of potential terrorist suspects. At times I was successful, but mostly these terrorists sowed carnage and death on all of those around me. My own family became secondary, and sleep was deprived of me as the battle to prevent another attack was constant. I watched those that worked with me or those I worked with in the civilian sector lose loved ones to these insane acts of horror. I watched people's lives shatter and become worthless after they were either mentally or physically maimed. I saw the pain and the suffering. I suffered then, and I suffer today. Certainly even more so today, but at least in an open manner with nothing to hide. I will allow myself to ponder ever so deep over how these attacks could have been prevented and thwarted, and if they could have been, while constantly searching for ways to detect, delay, and deter them. I am not sure what the statistics are on how many people face death in their lives by a suicide bombing, but I am sure that I am a statistic in my own right. I have been present and active in these 16 terrorist attacks. I have responded to over 50. I have spent many hours blocking roads so that terror could be contained and thwarted. I have spent many hours backing up fellow police officers in the old city of Jerusalem, protecting this ancient, historic, and religious city which means so much to so many. I have almost been physically injured or possibly killed by at least a few of these attacks, and I've faced my own mortality more times than I care to remember. Yet I didn't talk about it with anyone. I never dared to speak. In every such attack, I saw blood and carnage in ways that are hard to imagine and describe. I recognized people I knew that were killed, burned, and injured in these bombing scenes. And I left these scenes with a heavy load on my chest. But I keep it to myself. For 10 long years, I kept all this closed up inside of me, daring not to mention anything for fear of being seen as weak. It was my wife who alerted me to my simmering post-traumatic stress disorder. I never noticed it myself. As the bombs continued and the carnage scenes mounted, I spent up to 20 hours a day at work. I come home, take off my shoes, lie on the couch for 3 to 4 hours, leave the police radio on next to my ear, on alert for the next blast. Gradually, nothing else seemed to matter. I missed bringing up my kids. I missed out on the best years. Once upon a time, I was an avid red meat eater, a relic of my South African origins. I stopped eating meat for months after the attacks of 2002. It reminded me of the bombing scenes. It still does at times. The smell lingers, as does the taste in my mouth. In an unusually cold and wet February in Israel last week, I hosted an integrated delegation of civilians and law enforcement officials from the United States for my 2 yearly Experience Israel training program that focuses on security specifically for law enforcement. This was no doubt one of the most emotional weeks of my life. The highlight of the week was firstly coming together with one of the Israel police bomb squad officers who worked with me at the Passover bombing of the Park Hotel, as well as several other terror attacks and events. I was also honored at the Netanya police station, where a special guard of honor was on parade and a full police escort was provided for the visiting delegation. I was greeted and honored by many of the police officers who worked with me during our years of hell facing terror on a daily basis. On Thursday night, the 9th of February 2012, I was honored yet again by One Family Fund, who surprised me and invited me to speak in front of an audience with a difference. The difference was that there were survivors of terrorist attacks, family members of loved ones whose lives were cut short by cowardly terrorist acts of violence. A special young man, Nati, who was hit directly by a Grad missile attack in Beersheba some 6 months ago, and he had lost his leg in a battle to survive. I also spoke in front of Billy and Karen Vaughn, the parents of the late Aaron Vaughn, who was a United States Navy SEAL, a member of SEAL Team 6, who was killed in action in Afghanistan just several months ago. It was an honor because at my request, the One Family Fund brought in the Vaughns as a new family member. They showed them care and comfort and made sure that they know that they belong. In an ecstasy of overwhelming emotion never felt before, I made more than friends that evening. I joined a new family. Today I teach and train those that want to learn, those that want to understand, those that are aware, and most importantly, those that know complacency can kill. Today, I remember and honor those victims and families who paid the ultimate price on the front lines of terror. Today, I honor my dear friend Marc Kahlberg, who in December of 2009 welcomed me on his Experience Israel tour and took me to Netanya, where we walked those terrorist scenes, and then we went to the Park Hotel. To Mark and to all of my friends and to those citizens of Israel, you have my firm commitment that as we go to the 27th of March, 2012, those 10 years that you saw shall not come back to haunt you again, as long as I can stand to be a defender of the modern-day state of Israel. May God bless America, God bless Israel, and God be with you, Marc Kahlberg, and your family.